Have you ever seen someone driving strangely and wondered what was wrong? Maybe you've even thought about stepping in to help. But what if your good intentions led to tragedy? On May 7th, 2019, something strange happened near Atlanta, Georgia. A man named Kenneth Herring ran a red light and crashed into a big truck. The accident damaged his pickup truck badly, but nobody was hurt. Witnesses saw Kenneth get out and walk around, looking confused. Then, suddenly, he got back into his broken truck and drove away. People who watched were worried because Kenneth didn't seem okay, but one young woman decided she couldn't just let him go, so she followed him. This decision led to a tragic ending. The woman who decided to follow Kenneth was 21-year-old Hannah Payne. Hannah thought she was helping by chasing Kenneth, but things quickly got out of hand. Instead of helping, her actions ended with someone losing their life, and Hannah herself facing very serious trouble. This case quickly became national news, and people everywhere talked about what happened. Some felt Hannah was a good person who just wanted to help. Others thought she had made a terrible mistake by acting like she was in charge. Was Hannah right to follow Kenneth, or did she make a huge mistake that cost a man his life? Kenneth Herring was a well-liked grandfather and father, a man who cared deeply for his family. Hannah Payne was young, only starting her life. Neither of them knew their lives were about to change forever because of one decision made in just a few moments. Before we share exactly what happened next, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss other important stories like this one. This story makes us think carefully about the choices we make in difficult situations, and it raises important questions about safety, responsibility, and what happens when ordinary people try to do the job of the police. On the evening of May 7th, 2019, near Atlanta's busy airport, traffic was heavier than usual. Nearby, on Interstate 285, a battery truck had caught fire, forcing roads to close and causing long delays. As cars slowly moved along Clark Howell Highway, a man named Terry Robinson saw something shocking happen right in front of him. Terry was an off-duty corrections officer, trained to notice when people might need help. A red Dodge pickup truck suddenly ran through a red traffic light. It almost hit a black Jeep, but instead slammed into a huge truck. Terry quickly stopped to help. Thankfully, the driver of the big truck was okay. The woman driving the black Jeep was also unharmed. That woman was 21-year-old Hannah Payne. Both Terry and Hannah immediately called 911. They wanted to make sure help was on the way. Hannah described the accident, explaining that a red pickup truck and a big semi-truck had collided. Meanwhile, the driver who had caused the accident, Kenneth Herring, got out of his damaged truck. He looked confused and was walking around, checking the damage. 20 minutes went by, and police had still not arrived. Terry called 911 again because he was worried about Kenneth. Terry noticed that Kenneth was behaving strangely. His truck was smoking badly, but Kenneth wouldn't turn it off. Suddenly, to everyone's surprise, Kenneth got back in his truck and began driving away. Terry shouted for others to take a quick photo of Kenneth's license plate. Hannah Payne, who had barely avoided the accident, made a quick decision. She jumped into her Jeep and began following Kenneth. Hannah called 911 again, telling the operator she thought Kenneth might be drunk and dangerous. The operator told Hannah clearly, "Do not chase him." They asked her to return to the accident location because officers were almost there. Hannah agreed at first, but then told the operator she had changed her mind and planned to follow Kenneth anyway, saying she wanted to make sure no one else got hurt. Hannah followed Kenneth closely, keeping the 911 operator updated. She managed to get Kenneth's license plate number and told it to the operator. The operator again asked Hannah not to follow Kenneth anymore, saying the police would handle it. But Hannah did not listen. She continued behind Kenneth, determined not to lose sight of him. About a mile from where the accident happened, Hannah used her Jeep to block Kenneth's truck at an intersection. She stopped right in front of him, forcing him to stop. Hannah then got out of her Jeep, holding her phone tightly. She walked quickly toward Kenneth's truck, planning to tell him he needed to wait for police. But something went terribly wrong. Hannah was also carrying a licensed weapon. She later told police that when she approached Kenneth's window, he became angry and grabbed her arm. Hannah said she was scared. She told Kenneth that she had a weapon and would use it. She claimed Kenneth then grabbed her hand, and during this struggle, the weapon went off, hitting Kenneth once in the stomach. Right after it happened, Hannah called 911 again. She cried and told the operator that Kenneth had grabbed her and that he had caused the weapon to fire. She insisted it wasn't her intention to shoot Kenneth. By this time, people nearby had seen what happened. Some had recorded videos on their phones. Police arrived quickly to find Hannah holding her weapon. She handed it to them immediately. Emergency responders tried to save Kenneth, but sadly, he did not survive. At first, Hannah pleaded with the witnesses around her. She asked them to tell police Kenneth had attacked her. Hannah was clearly upset and confused about what had just happened. Witnesses told the police different stories. Some said Hannah seemed angry and aggressive from the start. Others said Kenneth looked very confused and did not seem like he was trying to hurt anyone. Kenneth's family later explained why he might have seemed confused that day. He had diabetes, and his wife said he was probably experiencing a medical emergency when the accident happened. A medical expert who heard about the case agreed, saying Kenneth's behavior matched what happens when a diabetic person needs urgent help. Kenneth's family said he was probably trying to reach the hospital because he realized something was very wrong. Hannah Payne's choice to follow Kenneth Herring ended in tragedy. Instead of letting the police handle the situation, her decision led to Kenneth losing his life and her facing serious charges. This event would soon become a major debate. Was Hannah Payne a citizen trying to help, or did she act recklessly by trying to enforce the law herself? Kenneth Herring was known as a kind and hard-working man. He was 62 years old and had spent his life taking care of his family. He was married and had grown-up children and grandchildren who loved him deeply. Kenneth worked different jobs throughout his life. He was good at fixing cars, repairing air conditioners, and doing handyman tasks. His family said he always tried to help anyone who needed it. The red pickup truck Kenneth drove had once belonged to his father. It was full of tools Kenneth used for work. But that truck also carried something important to Kenneth's daily life: insulin needles, used to control his diabetes. Kenneth's diabetes often required careful attention. If his blood sugar became too low, he might get dizzy or confused. On May 7th, Kenneth was likely having such an emergency. Experts later agreed his strange driving and confusion at the accident scene matched symptoms of low blood sugar. Kenneth's wife said he might have been trying to drive himself to a hospital when he crashed into the truck. Hannah Payne was a young woman, just beginning her adult life. Hannah had recently started working in property management. Her job involved renting homes, meeting new people, and sometimes handling cash payments. Because she felt her work could be risky at times, Hannah legally carried a personal safety weapon. She had gotten her license to carry it shortly after turning 21. When police first talked to Hannah after the incident, she said she followed Kenneth to help the police, believing she was doing the right thing. She told officers she was scared Kenneth would cause another accident or hurt someone else. Hannah explained that when she stopped Kenneth's truck, she only wanted him to wait for police, but things quickly turned dangerous. She claimed Kenneth grabbed her phone, then her wrist, and refused to let go. She also said he pressed the gas pedal, causing his truck to bump into her Jeep. Hannah felt afraid and told Kenneth she had a weapon and would use it. According to her, Kenneth said threatening things, making her believe he was reaching for something dangerous in his truck. Hannah said the struggle over the weapon ended when it accidentally went off, seriously wounding Kenneth. However, witnesses at the scene described things differently. One woman who saw what happened called 911 and said Hannah was angry and aggressive. She claimed Hannah got out of her Jeep yelling at Kenneth, then struck him through his open window. Another witness even recorded video footage showing Hannah looking upset while holding her weapon. Police found that Kenneth never had any dangerous items in his hands. Although there were tools and a knife far back in his truck, officers said Kenneth could not easily reach them from where he was sitting. Police also carefully examined Hannah's injuries after the incident. They noted scratches on her neck and wrist, and her shirt was torn, indicating there had been some kind of struggle. But detectives still had questions about whether those injuries happened because Kenneth attacked her, or if they were simply a result of Hannah leaning into the truck, or Kenneth trying to pull away from her. From the beginning, many people debated Hannah's actions. Her lawyer said Hannah acted out of fear and tried to be responsible by following Kenneth until police arrived. He insisted Hannah never wanted things to end the way they did. Hannah's family and friends described her as caring and kind, a person who always wanted to help. They believed she was wrongly accused of doing something harmful on purpose. But Kenneth's family saw Hannah's choices differently. They felt Hannah acted recklessly, taking matters into her own hands without the authority to do so. Kenneth's brother and sisters openly questioned if race played a role in Hannah's decision. Kenneth was black and Hannah was white, leading some to wonder if assumptions or biases affected how Hannah responded that day. However, Hannah's family strongly denied she had any racial motives, pointing out she had diverse friendships and relationships. Despite the debate, one thing was clear: Hannah Payne's choice had permanent consequences for both families. Kenneth lost his life, leaving behind family members who would never see him again. Hannah faced serious criminal charges, changing her life forever as well. This tragic moment raised difficult questions for everyone involved. Should ordinary people try to enforce the law? Or should they always leave it to trained authorities, even if it feels like help is needed quickly? What responsibilities do people have when witnessing something wrong or dangerous happening around them? These questions would soon become central in Hannah's trial, and the answers would determine her future and how this event would be remembered. The case against Hannah Payne took several years to reach trial. Delays were common, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which slowed down courts all across Georgia. People wondered why it took so long for justice to happen. Kenneth's family was very upset by the wait. They wanted answers and closure. Hannah faced several serious charges, including causing Kenneth's death on purpose, false imprisonment, and illegally using her personal weapon. Her lawyer, Matt Tucker, argued from the start that Hannah was innocent. He said she had tried to do the right thing, but ended up in a situation she couldn't control. In the courtroom, both sides presented very different stories about what happened. The prosecutors said Hannah acted like she was in charge, ignoring instructions not to follow Kenneth.
And you don't get the death penalty for committing a traffic infraction.
Prosecutors told the jury during closing arguments 62-year-old Kenneth Herring got the death penalty administered by Hannah Payne, all because he was involved in a hit and run back in 2019. Nigel Hunter said Payne should have listened to repeated orders from 911 not to chase Herring, who was minding his own business.
They told the jury Hannah used her vehicle to force Kenneth's truck to stop. They argued this made Hannah responsible for everything that happened afterward. The prosecution used the recorded 911 calls as evidence to show that Hannah chose to ignore the dispatcher's clear warnings to stop following Kenneth. Prosecutors also presented video evidence captured by witnesses who saw the confrontation. They said these videos showed Hannah acting in an aggressive manner towards Kenneth. Witnesses described her as angry, yelling loudly, and threatening Kenneth. This behavior, prosecutors argued, meant Hannah was not acting in self-defense. On the other hand, Hannah's lawyer insisted she was simply trying to help. He told the jury Hannah truly believed Kenneth was dangerous to others on the road, and that her goal was only to keep people safe until police arrived. Hannah herself took the witness stand, a risky choice because it meant prosecutors could ask her tough questions directly. When Hannah testified, she told the court she never intended to harm Kenneth. She described being frightened, claiming Kenneth refused to wait for police and became aggressive toward her. Hannah explained how Kenneth grabbed her wrist and shirt, causing her fear. She said she never purposely pulled the trigger of her weapon. It happened accidentally during the struggle. Hannah became emotional, telling jurors she wished she had never followed Kenneth at all. However, during questioning by prosecutors, Hannah struggled to keep her story consistent. She sometimes appeared confused or frustrated, which made jurors question her credibility. Prosecutors pointed out that Hannah changed details about the incident several times. This raised doubts about her version of events. Prosecutors also highlighted forensic evidence to challenge Hannah's claims. Experts showed that Kenneth's DNA wasn't clearly found on Hannah's weapon, raising questions about whether Kenneth ever actually grabbed it. They also confirmed Kenneth had no visible injuries consistent with being hit repeatedly, which conflicted with witness accounts that Hannah had physically struck Kenneth. Throughout the trial, emotions ran high. Kenneth's family, along with community groups like the NAACP, expressed concerns about how Hannah had been treated by the justice system. They worried race might have influenced both Hannah's decision and the delayed legal process. They publicly called for justice to be served swiftly and fairly, saying it was wrong for Hannah to remain free for so long while waiting for trial. Adding more drama to the case, Hannah's lawyer caused extra delays when he missed important court dates, claiming health issues. This angered the judge, who publicly questioned whether these excuses were truthful. Eventually, the lawyer returned, and the trial finally moved forward, but this caused frustration and worry for everyone involved. As the trial continued, prosecutors asked the jury to consider one simple question. Was Hannah Payne a helpful citizen trying to keep others safe? Or was she someone who acted dangerously and without authority, leading to tragedy? Hannah's defense lawyer reminded the jury that Hannah's intent mattered greatly. He argued she never planned to cause harm, emphasizing that she had stayed at the scene and cooperated fully with police after the incident. He asked the jurors to consider whether Hannah truly deserved to lose her freedom for what he insisted was a tragic mistake, not an intentional crime. After days of emotional testimonies, evidence review, and strong arguments from both sides, the jury was ready to make a very important decision. Everyone in the courtroom, Kenneth's grieving family, Hannah and her loved ones, and people watching closely around the nation, waited anxiously to hear whether the jury would find Hannah guilty or innocent. The outcome would affect not only Hannah and Kenneth's families, but also influence public conversations about responsibility, citizen intervention, and justice. Would the jury view Hannah's actions as reasonable, or would they agree with prosecutors that she had dangerously overstepped her bounds? As the jury left to discuss the evidence privately, the tension was high. People outside the courtroom debated what should happen next. Did Hannah Payne deserve a chance at redemption? Or should she face the full consequences for a life-changing decision made in a split second? The answer to these questions was now in the hands of 12 ordinary people, jurors tasked with deciding the fate of a young woman and determining justice for a man who lost his life unnecessarily. After carefully considering all the evidence, the jury finally reached a decision. The courtroom was quiet and tense. Family members from both sides held their breath, hoping for closure but fearing the outcome. Kenneth Herring's family had waited years for justice. Hannah Payne hoped the jury would see things her way. When the verdict was read, Hannah's reaction was immediate. She broke down crying as the jury announced she was found guilty on all charges. This included intentionally taking Kenneth's life, wrongful detention, and misuse of her weapon.
Count 1, as to the offense of malice murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 2, as to the offense of felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 3, as to the offense of aggravated assault, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Kenneth's family members also cried, but for them, these tears came from a sense of relief and justice finally being served. Kenneth's sister spoke emotionally after the verdict, saying her brother could finally rest in peace. She described the long years spent waiting, wondering if justice would ever arrive. Kenneth's family made it clear they believed the jury had done the right thing, though they acknowledged nothing could ever truly heal the pain of losing Kenneth. Hannah's family expressed shock and sadness. They insisted Hannah was not a cruel or harmful person and believed she did not deserve this outcome. They continued to argue she had only wanted to help and had no bad intentions that day. Soon after the jury's decision, the judge held a sentencing hearing. This was when the judge decided exactly how long Hannah would spend behind bars. At this hearing, Kenneth's family had the chance to speak about their loss and how deeply his absence affected them. His sisters and brothers spoke with sadness, describing how family gatherings and holidays felt empty without Kenneth. They asked the judge to give Hannah a sentence that matched their pain, reminding the courtroom that Kenneth would never come home again. Hannah's family and friends also spoke, hoping to persuade the judge to give her a lighter sentence. They described Hannah's past as peaceful and kind, explaining that she had never been in trouble before this event. A family friend even directly apologized to Kenneth's family, saying Hannah would never have intentionally caused harm. Hannah's lawyer asked the judge for understanding, emphasizing that Hannah's choice was a mistake rather than an intentional act of harm. He asked the judge to think about Hannah's young age, her lack of criminal history, and the fact that she had cooperated fully during the investigation. However, prosecutors firmly requested a tough sentence, arguing that Hannah's actions were serious and reckless. They pointed out that her decision to follow and confront Kenneth directly caused his death. Prosecutors reminded the judge that Hannah chose not to listen when told to stay away, saying this showed a dangerous disregard for the law and the safety of others. Finally, the judge announced Hannah's sentence. Hannah was sentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after many years. On top of this, the judge added extra years to her sentence because of the weapon and wrongful detention charges. This meant Hannah would spend decades behind bars before she could even request parole. When the sentence was read, Hannah lowered her head and cried quietly. Reality set in, her life had dramatically changed, and her freedom was gone. Outside the courtroom, Kenneth's family said they were satisfied with the sentence, though they had hoped Hannah would spend the rest of her life without parole. They felt it was fair because Hannah would still lose a significant part of her life, something Kenneth could never get back. They hoped others would learn from this case and think twice before taking justice into their own hands.
They heard all of the evidence, they saw all of the evidence, and they came back with a swift verdict. And when I heard the first verdict, I know we wasn't supposed to show sign, but tears started rolling down my face because at that moment I felt a relief that came over. And from the first to the second to all the way to the eighth, all I could say was thank you.
The community closely watching the case also reacted strongly. Some believed the sentence sent a clear message about the dangers of citizens trying to handle situations that should be left to the authorities. Others debated if the sentence was too harsh, given Hannah's intentions. These discussions continued long after the case concluded, raising important questions about citizen actions and accountability. In the end, the case left many unanswered questions. Hannah Payne alone knows exactly why she chose to follow Kenneth, despite being told not to. Though she insisted her intentions were good, the consequences of her actions were permanent and severe. For Kenneth's family, justice was served, but they would always live with the painful loss of someone they loved dearly. The story of Hannah Payne and Kenneth Herring serves as a powerful reminder about the dangers of taking matters into our own hands, and it challenges all of us to carefully consider how our choices affect others, sometimes forever. Cases like this one make us think deeply about the choices we make in our everyday lives. They show us how quickly good intentions can turn into tragedy. Hannah Payne's decision started as an attempt to help, but ended with painful consequences for two families, changing their lives forever. One important lesson from this story is that taking matters into our own hands can lead to serious, unexpected results. Authorities often advise us to let trained professionals handle difficult situations. Police and emergency responders have specific training and experience in managing these events safely. Although stepping in might seem like the right thing to do at the moment, sometimes our emotions or fears can lead us down a dangerous path. Many people who heard about Hannah's case wondered what they might have done differently. It's common to want to help when we see someone driving dangerously or acting strangely, but how we choose to help matters. Calling emergency services and carefully following their instructions might be the best and safest way. Hannah's situation teaches us the importance of listening carefully to authorities during emergencies, even if we feel strongly about taking action ourselves. This case also sparked important conversations about the potential dangers of personal biases and assumptions. Witnesses and community leaders questioned whether biases influence the decisions made that day. Even when people do not have bad intentions, unconscious beliefs or misunderstandings about others can lead to unnecessary conflict or harm. This situation reminds us all to carefully consider our own judgments about people, especially in tense or confusing moments. Community leaders have used this tragedy to talk openly about fairness and equal justice. They highlighted the importance of treating everyone equally and respectfully, no matter their background. Authorities and advocacy groups continue to discuss ways to ensure fairness within communities, stressing that everyone deserves safety and protection under the law. The legal system itself was also under the spotlight because of the long delays in Hannah's trial. Many people felt justice took far too long. Kenneth's family, in particular, suffered extra emotional stress from the uncertainty during these delays. Advocates and the public discussed ways to improve the justice system, suggesting reforms to make trials faster and fairer, ensuring families do not endure unnecessary hardships. Kenneth's family, despite receiving justice, continued to carry the heavy pain of losing a loved one. This case highlighted how one person's actions can permanently impact the lives of many others. It serves as a reminder that every choice we make, no matter how small it may seem, can affect many people in deep, lasting ways. This story drew attention nationally, partly because it raised difficult questions about the limits of personal responsibility and citizen action. Experts and advocates joined the conversation, emphasizing the critical difference between being helpful and dangerously overstepping boundaries. They reminded everyone that the best way to help in emergencies is to contact trained professionals immediately. Educational campaigns and community groups also use this case as an opportunity to teach young people about responsible decision-making. Schools and community centers began discussing the importance of understanding the consequences of our actions, emphasizing empathy and careful judgment, especially in stressful situations. As conversations continued, communities learned that respectful dialogue and understanding were critical. The discussions around this case have pushed communities to think more deeply about what true justice and accountability mean. Authorities highlighted the need for clear guidelines and better communication during emergencies. Advocacy groups called for more education about implicit biases, hoping increased awareness might prevent similar tragedies in the future. Ultimately, the heartbreaking outcome of this case provided a powerful lesson for everyone involved. It reminded us all that good intentions alone are not enough. Clear thinking, careful judgment, and trust in trained professionals are essential when dealing with emergencies. Kenneth's memory continues through his family's efforts to share his story, hoping it inspires greater understanding and caution among community members. Hannah's difficult journey shows the heavy price that can come from one impulsive choice. Both sides hope their experiences teach others to pause, reflect, and act responsibly when faced with difficult decisions. As you reflect on this story, we encourage you to think about what you might do differently in a similar situation. Have you ever faced a choice where you felt you needed to step in and help? If so, how did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd like to hear your experiences and perspectives. Also, please remember to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel if you found this story meaningful. Stories like this help us understand complicated human situations better and encourage us to make wiser decisions in our own lives. Thank you for watching and reflecting on this important story with us.